If you wanted an apology for Myles Garrett, you didn't get one on Friday. We'll talk about his press conference following his big contract extension coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Did Myles help or hurt himself with his press conference on Friday, explaining why he backed out of his trade request and decided to sign with the Browns? Also, I'm more convinced than ever that Cleveland's going quarterback at 2 after hearing Myles speak as well. I do want to thank you for being in every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making this your first listen every single day. Just a reminder, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed with bonus content on some weekends as well. And it's totally free to you. All you have to do, hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. And of course, at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, you can get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comments section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. Have you ever, by the way, this show is brought to you by Monarch Money. If you ever check your bank account, wonder where did all my money go? Well, you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So yes, Myles Garrett spoke for the first time since signing his contract extension last Sunday, making him the highest paid non-quarterback in football. And this was kind of an abnormal press conference because, Myles, in theory, didn't even have to speak until, if he wanted to, training camp. Like, he could have put this off for that long and just kind of let it fester and let it sort of sit. And he didn't. He showed up. He spoke on it. He talked about what happened, what changed. One thing I do want to say, I did think in some respects, like, the tone was a little bit lost because the Browns, they had like dinosaurs lined up on the press conference, the podium. They had cupcakes with dinosaurs in them and like a dinosaur themed, like it was a dinosaur themed party, essentially, which is funny because that's what my toddler's party theme is going to be this year when he turns 3. But regardless, like I get why they found it celebratory. And in a lot of respects, it is a monumental day. Like, you retained the second greatest player in franchise history behind only Jim Brown for likely the end of his career with this deal. Like, you got a deal done. You kept him in Cleveland. That's a big deal, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. But at the same time, like, I don't think this was celebratory for the fans. For you, like, there was fans who were upset by this. There was fans who felt some type of way about Myles' trade request, even though in the beginning I think people understood it. The going on Radio Row and ragging on the team and saying it wasn't good enough and sort of like kicking Cleveland on the way out. I don't think fans took like that. They didn't like the way he went about it. They understood the trade request, and if he was just left like a public statement, I think it would have been probably more people on his side. But the way it was kind of handled, I think, annoyed people and rubbed people the wrong way. So there is some reconciling that needs to go on here. Just to kind of highlight some of what was said by Myles, if you didn't see it or if you're just kind of looking for thoughts, I think I'll say this: Myles is generally pretty candid. I thought he was pretty candid in what he had to say in this press conference. He talked about how he didn't, how he didn't regret anything. And so that's the biggest thing here is, like, if you were hoping for an apology for Myles, that's not what this was about for him on Friday. He did not apologize for what he did. He did not apologize for the trade request. He felt that the trade request was necessary to basically spark the conversations that he had with the Browns brass to get this contract done, to, solidify his future here in Cleveland, but also, I think on a higher level, also have those tough conversations about, the future of the team and what they need to do to be better, because he did stand by the fact that he believes from the start, this has never been about the money. Like, yeah, it ended that way. And so it's easy for us on the outside looking in to say, well, it was only about the money. But he was pretty steadfast in that, like, no, I truly requested this trade because it was about winning for me. Like, I wanted to win. And, when push came to shove, it got me a contract that was record setting and I couldn't say no. But, like, at the same time, it was still always about the winning for me. And so he felt like that doing what he did advanced those conversations, put the Browns, put some pressure on the Browns to, go out and make sure that they're doing the right things this offseason and beyond to put Myles in a spot where he doesn't have to deal with 3-14 ever again in his career. And I can understand that. I can see where he's coming from that perspective in terms of wanting to have the team, be pushed to the limit in terms of what they're doing, how they're building, put the pressure on. I would argue that he didn't have to go as far as he did to do that. I thought he did it at the end of the season. I thought when he sat there and basically left the door open on potentially playing somewhere else, that would have been enough to inspire the organization to like, hey, you better stay competitive or I'm out. I also think like if it was only about the money, he also had done enough up until that point to push for getting the contract that he maybe really wanted. I don't know that he had to go to Radio Row to do those things. So it does feel like this was truly just a pivot from Myles Garrett. And there's reasons for that. Some of it probably is he realized he only had so much leverage. And if he really wanted to sit out games, that was the last card he could play. He threatened that, as recently as like a little over a week ago that he was going to do that. But he then, walked it back and signs the contract because I'm sure he realized like he didn't want to do that. Like the guy, and I said that from the beginning, Myles Garrett cares about his legacy. As much as he talks about winning being the most important thing, and he gives that off that mentality of like it's about the team all the time, generally during the season, he still cares about his legacy and getting to the Hall of Fame and those types of things. And so I don't think he really wanted to sit out games. I think he wanted to play. And so it seems like he has a more, I think from this, he gets more influence on things. There's, he was in meetings this week with Russell Wilson. Like, I think he's going to sort of help sort of nurture that. And that's a hurdle he's going to have to get past, explaining to people like, how could you go and, bash this team and then, come back and now be trying to recruit me to come here? What's your explanation? And the explanation can just be, well, hey, they sent me a record-setting contract, but you can get paid here too. And I think most players will accept that. And that's kind of the next part of this, right, is how does everybody reconcile from this? Fans with Myles, Myles with fans, Myles with the team with Myles. Seems like the team's fine. They're putting dinosaurs out and doing cupcakes and all that to celebrate this moment. So I don't think that's so much a concern. And I think from both sides, they understand the business of football, right? Like, this is how it goes. There's not supposed to be any hard feelings. It's not supposed to be taken personally when a player, pushes to maybe for some change or pushes to request a trade because they want more money or whatever it is. The same way Lamar Jackson did that a couple years ago. T. Higgins has requested a trade from the Bengals last year. Like there's plenty of instances of players doing this and they get paid on the back end. So it ended in an expected way. And, I think these organizations at this point, these players at this point, I think are far beyond taking things so personal that like they can't get past it. Like the Browns feel like this is the right investment. It's somebody who's important to the community, somebody who is a staple of the franchise. They face the franchise and who is frankly the biggest reason he's a really damn good football player. And so they feel like they're getting the bang for their buck. They can see past the trade request. Clearly they were having ongoing conversations. Myles alluded to that. He thought this all forced the important conversations that they needed to have. And so they're going to sort of sing Kumbaya and ride off into the sunset here. So, I don't think it's going to be an issue from that standpoint. The bigger one is how you, as a fan, how other fans will feel about Myles moving forward. And I do think, again, the importance of getting this out of the way now can't be understated. I think the fact that he came in and addressed this now allows the healing process to begin for fans who were maybe upset with Myles. I also think, too, that, and I don't want to put this lightly because, yes, like the fans matter, but I do think like fans are able to forgive based off of the level of production and the effort that's put in. And one thing you can never question with Myles is that the effort and the play will be there. Barring injury, he's always, the guy played through the foot injuries last year. Like he doesn't take himself off the field very often unless he really has to. You don't have to question his ability to go out and play hard. He's going to do that. Now, if you want to question if he's a good leader on this team, I get that. And I've always kind of argued and felt maybe Myles isn't that guy. He's not the raw speech guy the same way Jameis Winston was. He tries to lead by example. I do think like when he speaks, people listen. He was the one at the end of the games last year saying, why do we keep playing hard? Because what you're putting on tape is going to be remembered forever. Like, that's your legacy. And so I think, like, people listen to what he has to say, but I don't know that he's like a rally the troops guy, and he doesn't have to be. And he alluded to that in his press conference too, like the idea that money doesn't mean you're a leader or you have to be a leader. I think there's some truth in that. Like, Myles just might not ever be that guy, and that's okay. But yeah, in the grand scheme of things, like, I get where you might expect more from Myles now. I mean, the guy's a bona fide Hall of Famer already. He's going to go out and give you the effort on game days. He's the play is likely going to match or be on par with what would warrant this contract. I guess if it slips, yeah, you'll say something. You maybe will express your frustrations about that after he made the trade request. But he believes in his heart of hearts, and he said this, that he will convince and win back the fans by the way he plays and the way that he goes about his business. And I believe that he will. This was an important step in the healing process, and now hopefully everybody can sort of move on and get ready for next season with Myles at the forefront of this thing, helping, it seems like, recruit some players. Another thing Myles alluded to was the idea that he does seem to know what the Browns' plans are at quarterback. Now, this goes back to conversations we've had about what type of plan the Browns have presented him. It sounds like they have a better one now, and I've never been more convinced that they're taking a quarterback at 2. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. It's no secret. We all want upsets in the tournament. They're the lifeblood of college basketball this time of year, and especially with a team like UConn, who just lost in their conference tournament the other night, who's not quite as dominant as they've been in previous years. FanDuel makes it easy to back them in spreads, totals, and game props. Pick your underdogs of your choosing. In the end, you also still have to have a favorite team in mind that you think is going to win it all. I've got my eye on Maryland as kind of a sneaky top team. They got great senior guard play. I'll put not a lot of money, but some money on the Terrapins via the FanDuel app, which is easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, so we talked about Myles in his press conference and how there wasn't really an apology, if that's what you were looking for. But I think he mended fences, or he started mending fences, and everyone will sort of move forward from here. Now, that said, the other thing he was asked about was like the difference between what the plan was when he first talked to the team versus what the plan is now. And he wasn't going to give away the story here, but he did sort of point at the fact that he was in meetings with Russell Wilson this week. And I actually thought one of the funnier lines of the entire press conference was his line about his pitch to Russ, which was basically, yeah, listen, if you come here, you don't got to worry about me sacking you, 3 or 4 times in a season or anything like that. Like, we'll be on the same side. And I think that's pretty good line if you're being honest, because not getting chased down by the best defensive player in football is a pretty good gig, if you ask me, or a pretty good thing to know. So, I thought that was kind of funny. But on top of that, he was asked about the plan at 2. In the press conference setting, he basically said, yeah, no, he said next question. And I think that was because of who asked the question. It was Jason Lloyd of The Athletic. And Jason Lloyd of The Athletic had that, really enlightening piece on some, questioning in some of Myles' tactics and his leadership. And I think he was just avoiding Jason Lloyd questions in general for the press conference setting. But he did talk with Andrew Siciliano, the voice of the team, via the Browns, and, sort of was smiling through his answer about like, yeah, I have a good idea what they're going to do in the draft. And because of these comments, I've never been more convinced of taking a quarterback at 2. Now, I think that was already what the tea leaves were sort of pointing at. But, and it makes sense. Like I said back in the beginning of the offseason, there's no way that the Browns could have sat there and given Myles a concise plan in January when the season ended 3-14. Frustrations are running high. Another thing that Myles alluded to, and said, here's what we're doing. We're going to go out and we're going to get Russell Wilson. And then we're going to go draft a quarterback at 2, because they don't have everything mapped out at that point. There's still evaluations that have to go on with certain college players, including the quarterbacks. There was still the combine. There's still pro days. There's still the Senior Bowl at that time. Like, there was still so much in flux in terms of formulating what their plan was going to be. And so now I think they've probably, as they've kept the conversations open, and again, Myles talked about that, I'm assuming that they I don't want to get it twisted. The money was the biggest driver why Myles is back. I think that is pretty clear. But I do think he emphasized so much, like, the lines of communication staying open and having the tough conversations. I do think some of him reneging on his trade request came down to, like, they've talked to me, they've given me a better idea of what the plan is going to be. I kind of like the direction they're thinking now. And I think maybe I feel pretty good about the quarterback situation. There was one answer where he just flat out talked about, like, Andrew Berry's mapped out a good plan for the offense. Like, he basically was putting it all on the offense of, like, yeah, the offense is the problem. He's got to fix it, and he knows that. And so I think, that was kind of enlightening into how these conversations has gone. Like, he's clearly emphasized to them, like, quarterback, as have some of his teammates in public appearances that they've made about figuring out the quarterback position. So, like, he knows. And so because of the comments he made with Andrew Siciliano, Myles Garrett, that is, it feels like it's written in the stars at this point that the Browns are going to find their other veteran. And that might be Russell Wilson, who visited with the team. Maybe there's a chance you wait out the Falcons and see if they're going to do something. Maybe there's a chance they trade with the Falcons. Although I think if you're the Browns, you call their bluff on that and you don't trade anybody right now, and you let them sort of sit in their situation until they're ready to trade him. If that's what they want to do, whether that's you or a different team, so be it. You shouldn't give up draft assets just because the Falcons are going to be stingy about Kirk Cousins, who's not even going to start for them. But, like, whatever it's going to be, they're going to find their veteran, and then they're going to draft a rookie, and I'm assuming they're going to draft one of these guys at number 2. Now, I'm not saying they told Myles specifically, like, we know for sure we're getting this guy, because we don't, like, at this point, they don't even know what the Titans are going to do. Granted, it's starting to feel like the Titans are probably taking Cam Ward. And so if that's the case, then, like, they probably feel, like, they're 2 overall. They feel confident that they're going to get one of those guys. One of those guys will be on the board at 2. And if they like both of them enough to be like, hey, we think either of these guys could turn our franchise around, we're going to pull the trigger on one of them. I think that's enough to kind of get Myles believing, yeah, you know what? I'm on board with this. But, like, I can't ignore Myles' emphasis on offense in his press conference and the quarterback position, helping recruit and sort of lighting up as he talks about the possibility that the Browns, of what the Browns' plans could be at number 2. But I mean, I've thrown out some different scenarios that, like, maybe they pitched him on, hey, let's get you Abdul Carter to be a sidekick, and we'll worry about the quarterback later. Maybe that's still in the cards. Maybe that's something they've talked about. Maybe they really like Jackson Dart, and they're like, he's our guy, we're going to get him later. And Myles is okay with that. Again, $40 million will get you to say anything, but I still believe in my heart of hearts that based on what Myles had to say yesterday, based on his comments on the team, with team personnel and Andrew Siciliano, it just feels like quarterback's going to be the move. Quarterback's going to be the play, and rightfully so. I mean, it's the biggest need of this team. What's going to be fascinating after that is then, like, where do they go from there? What happens at number 2, or not number 2? What happens in the second round? Is it, because there's still so many needs you have? Is it lineman? Is it running back? Is it receiver? The options are endless, but I'm assuming they've come to Myles now with a different, or a better, more detailed plan, I should say, not better, but a more detailed plan about what they're sort of, where their heads are at, how they feel about these quarterbacks. And in some capacity, even though, again, the money is the biggest factor here and why Myles is on the team and sticking around, I do think that, he seems pretty comfortable understanding what the team's going to do at that position. And it feels like a quarterback at 2 is kind of written in the stars at this point. So that's the skivvy on Myles' press conference. Again, if you were looking for an apology, I'm sorry you didn't get one. I understand why some fans still feel like it's disingenuous of him to sit there and say, the plan has always been to finish my career with the team I got drafted by, when that wasn't the plan even a month ago. But I do think Myles probably came to realize some different things maybe are important to him throughout this situation, understanding like there wasn't a lot of leeway for him to do things. And if the team wasn't going to move him, he was going to have to sort of give a little bit, and he did. And he seems happy now with the idea of, yeah, I can be indoctrinated into this community forever and, sort of forge a legacy here in Cleveland And I just want to be able to do that while winning championships, which was what was important to him. And the Browns obviously have told him some sort of plan that he believes they can turn it around maybe now sooner than he expected. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always. A bonus episode at that. And there'll be plenty more to come next week as free agency continues to unfold. Nick Chubb is still out there. Browns still got to find a veteran quarterback that they're going to sign at some point, we would imagine. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already to make sure Locked On Browns is your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft, or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs, Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.